My name is Gladys Calderón. I'm a senior in psychology, and I will graduate in May of 2016.
And I'm Manda Coupe. I'm also a senior in psychology, but I'm graduating this May 2015. I think a lot of people think that psychology is just like mental disorders and like therapists who treat mental disorders, but really it's a lot more broad than that. It basically just kind of deals with all aspects of like human thinking and human emotion and behavior. But I mean, if you're interested in, you know, how people think and why they do things the way they do, then psychology would probably be really interesting to you.
Yeah, in psychology we learn a lot about like individual differences, but we also talk about like the human race as a whole and how we're alike and how we're different. We talk about like how childhood can affect your adolescence and your adulthood. We talk about gender differences and cultural differences. Like she said, we also talk about mental disorders and how to treat them. So it's just everything to do with human behavior and thinking and society and how social interactions influence behavior and thinking and all that stuff. Well, there's, you know, the common belief that you can go into being a psychologist or a counselor. You could also be a professor if you want, a teacher. You could be a researcher. You could also work for like a business. Like there's a subfield called industrial organizational psychology, where you look at employees and how they work best together. There's a lot that you could do with it, really.
Yeah, it's important to know, though, that with just a bachelor's in psychology, you can't really do a lot of the things that people think of as a psychologist. You need to get a master's or a doctorate to be able to be a therapist or something like that. But with a bachelor's in psych, you really can do a lot of things that are not necessarily, you know, psychology. I mean, to have a bachelor's degree, there's a lot of jobs you can just get with that. It's also, you know, it looks good to employers sometimes because it shows that you have a knowledge of how people think and, you know, people in general, which is very applicable to a lot of jobs. But yeah, if you want to, you know, go on to be a therapist or a professor or something, you'll need to, you know, go on to graduate school. Well, I started off college as a photojournalism major, and I kind of realized that that wasn't something that I really had the personality for, and so then I majored in business because I was like, that's kind of general, maybe I'll do that, and that was just a little too technical for me. And so one of my friends was a psychology major, and she was a senior at the time, and her classes all sounded really interesting to me, and so I was like, maybe I'll just switch to that, because I figured, you know, also it's a pretty general degree. If I decide that I don't like this, I could get some other kind of job with it. But as soon as I started taking psych classes, they were all just really interesting, and so I stuck with that and immediately just kind of, you know, dove into it and really liked it.
I actually started off as a dental hygiene major, and I was taking like, you know, anatomy and physics and chemistry, and I wasn't getting like the good grades because I didn't really like it. And at the time I was taking a psychology class, and I loved the class, and I got like an A in it, and I liked to study for it. So I was like, you know what, I might as well major in this because I like it. So that's how I decided to do it. I would say to start thinking about what you want to do with your degree. Like start thinking about that early on, because like when I came into IPFW and I was going to do psychology, like I thought I kind of want to be a counselor, maybe a professor, and I learned that you have to go to grad school for that. And my freshman year, I was like, it's okay, I'll think about that later on, I'll think about grad school like later on. But then like my junior year came and I was like, oh, I need to get involved in certain things in order to get accepted into grad school. So I think that just thinking about that stuff early on.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would say to just get involved in stuff in the psych department if it's stuff that you're interested in. Don't be intimidated or think that it's going to be too hard, because, you know, like you can do it if you work at it, and if you're the type of person who really likes this and is willing to apply yourself, like you're going to do fine. You'll probably really like it. But, you know, getting involved is great because, you know, you feel like you're part of something, you feel more like you belong to a community of people within the psych department and within IPFW. But, you know, it's also great because, like, that's how you get into grad school. You have to be involved in the department. And even if you don't end up going to grad school, it's still stuff that you can put on a resume. It still looks good for jobs.
Yeah, I was thinking graduate school. I'm going to apply for, like, counseling programs, but I'm also going to apply for developmental programs, which is, like, lifespan development. So I could either be, like, a counselor one day, or I could also be, like, a professor one day, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I've been applying to graduate schools for next year. I've gotten some positive feedback from some already, which is cool, so that might be something that I'm going into next year. But yeah, I'm also applying for, like, developmental programs and social and community psychology, basically, you know, using psychological research to address, you know, issues with child behavior and adolescent behavior, how kids do in school, other kind of systemic issues like that. But yeah, if I don't get into graduate school this year, I'm just gonna try to use the experiences from the end of my senior year and then apply again for the year after that. But I definitely would not have, like, wanted to apply to graduate school or felt that I was capable of it without getting involved in the psych department. The professors I've had who I've, you know, kind of developed a closer relationship with have been, like, very important in me wanting to do that and feeling that I could do that. They've really encouraged me, and, you know, because they've all gone through that too in order to become a professor.